The card reader beeped 3 times, which in Korea is the polite way of saying you are a poor man in an expensive room. The waiter tried again, beeped again. Somewhere behind me a chair scraped, and I heard the specific wet sound of a woman putting down her wine glass so she could film better with both hands. Declined, the waiter said. He said it quietly. He was the only person in that restaurant who tried to be kind to me that night, and I never learned his name. The bill said 1,840,000 won, 12 people. Soal, the place on the hill with the private rooms and the beef you have to book a month out. Charon had booked it. Charon had invited me, and Charon, 40 seconds earlier, had smiled at the waiter and said, "Put it on his card, he's paying," in the voice you'd use to hand someone a gift. I looked at her. She looked back with her chin propped on her knuckles like she was watching a movie she'd already seen. "It's a test," she said. "Just a little test. I wanted to see what kind of man you are, right?" A test. 3 years of night shifts at the Gimpo distribution center. 400 boxes an hour. My tuition paused, so hers wouldn't be. Test. The room laughed. Not all at once, that's the thing about rich people. They laugh in shifts so it lasts longer. Kang Ji-ho laughed first because he'd been waiting for permission all evening. Pyo Sewol laughed while holding her phone steady, which takes real training. Somebody's uncle laughed into his soup. Here's the part where you expect me to explain myself. I know. Everyone in that room was waiting for it too. That's what the whole thing was built for. The seat, the bill, the phone. They wanted me standing up saying, "I paid for your semesters, Charon. I paid for your dental work. I paid for the trip to Osaka you took without me." I didn't say it. I put my card back in my wallet. I stood up, I pushed my chair in because my mother raised me to push chairs in, and that's the entire list of what I did. "Wow," said Sewol, still filming. "He's not even going to—" Taejun, Charon's voice changed 1 degree. "Sit down, don't be dramatic." I walked out, not through the front. The front had a mirror the length of the hallway and a hostess who'd already seen the whole thing on her manager's phone. A hand caught my sleeve near the coat check, a big square hand with a driver's calluses on it, and pulled me sideways through a swinging door into a corridor that smelled like bleach and garlic. "This way, kid." Seo Gil, Chairman Yoon's driver, 19 years on the job, a man built like a filing cabinet. He'd driven me and Charon to the aquarium once when she was too hungover to take the subway, and he'd bought us both coffee out of his own pocket and refused the money back. He walked me past the dish pit and out into an alley behind the kitchen where the exhaust fans were screaming. "You want a ride?" "No." "Get in the car, Taejun." I said no. He stood there in his black suit next to a bin of shrimp shells, and he did the worst thing anybody did to me that night, which was look at me with pity. Then he pulled a folded 10,000 note out of his jacket and pushed it into my hand for the bus. And I took it because I had 2001 on my transit card, and the walk home was 11 kilometers. The video went up at 11:40 p.m. by 6. The next morning it had 400,000 views. The caption was 3 words and a laughing emoji. Test failed LOL. I know it was 400,000 because I watched the number climb from a plastic chair outside a convenience store in Sindorim, drinking the cheapest coffee in the cooler, refreshing with my thumb like an idiot. 2,000 comments. My face in the thumbnail. Mid-blink. Nobody in the comments defended me. I want to be clear about that, because later people rewrote it. Nobody defended me. 300 people wrote some version of "Know Your Place." Fine. At 7:40 the next morning, C.O. Gil got fired. I know the time because he texted me at 7:52. Don't worry about it. And old men don't wait long before they text something they've decided not to be upset about. I called. He picked up on the second ring and talked for 4 minutes about how it was a good time anyway. His knee had been bad. His daughter kept telling him to slow down. 19 years. They took his key card at the gate and told him to leave the car. Somewhere in the middle of that phone call, something in me went very quiet and very organized, like a room where someone had finally turned the lights on. I got on the 6600 bus to Yoido. Kaesong Group's headquarters is a glass wedge on the river with a lobby the size of a gymnasium and a sculpture out front that cost more than my father's funeral. I stood at the vehicle gate for 2 hours and 11 minutes. Not shouting, not holding a sign. Standing. At 10:19, the black sedan came out and stopped because I was in the way, and because Chairman Yoon Gicheol has never in his life passed up a chance to teach a lesson in front of an audience. The window came down. He didn't get out. 62 years old, silver at the temples, the kind of face that photographs well at charity dinners. 2 secretaries beside the car, 4 security guards, a delivery crew unloading water bottles, 11 employees on their smoke break by the planters, and every single one of them with a phone. "You're the boy," he said. "Yes. My daughter tells me you're a hard worker." He let that sit. That's what people say about a mule. One of the secretaries laughed and then coughed to cover it. I want to ask about your driver, I said. Mr. CO. He didn't do anything. He put a stranger in the service corridor of a restaurant where my family was eating. He walked me out, that's all. And you think that's a small thing? Chairman Yoon looked at me the way you look at a stain on a rug you're deciding whether to have replaced. Let me save you some years, since nobody else will. Poverty is not a character trait, it's a diagnosis. And you keep walking around showing everyone the chart like it's a certificate. 30 people. I counted later off the security footage when the footage was mine. 31 if you count the man on the water truck. I said nothing. He waited for it. He actually leaned an inch toward the window, waiting for the sound of a man defending himself, because that sound is the whole reason people like him roll windows down. When it didn't come, his mouth twitched like the punchline had been cut out of his joke. The window went up. The car left. I walked to the bus stop and my hands weren't shaking, which bothered me more than if they had been. I lived in a half-basement in Silom with one window at street level, so I mostly knew the world by shoes. My rent was $330,000 a month. That night, I had $81,001 in the bank, a bag of ramyeon, and a wall I'd been staring at for 6 hours without turning on the light. At 2:14 a.m., the wall said, "Contempt, 1,000 divided by 1,000. I want to say I handled it with dignity. I did not. I sat up so fast I hit my head on the shelf, which is how I know the shelf was real, and I was awake for the part that came next. The text hung in the air a hand's width from the concrete. Pale gold. No sound. Threshold reached. Summoning. Summoning what? And there was a woman sitting on my floor, cross-legged in my space, in a black dress that had no business being in a room with a mold problem. Maybe 25. Hair short at the back and long at the front. One earring. A face that was doing 3 expressions at once and enjoying all of them. She reached over, took the ramyeon packet out of my hand, read the flavor, and made a face. Beef. Really? Who? Boil water first, then talk. You've had nothing since yesterday morning and it's making you slow. She stood up, found my pot, filled it, put it on the burner. She knew which knob. I'm Hari, you summoned me. Technically, though summon is generous. You got humiliated in public for 2 days straight and the system did the rest. You mostly just stood there. What system? Yours. She poked the gold letters still hanging by the wall and they wobbled like a soap bubble. Contempt. That's the currency. Somebody looks down on you out loud in front of witnesses and it pays out. Bigger the mouth, more the witnesses, better the rate. Chairman Yoon alone was worth 600. Whoever laughed at the restaurant did you a favor and they'll never know it. That's insane. It's accounting. The water started ticking in the pot. Here's the part you need to memorize, so listen with the front of your head. You are not allowed to defend yourself. Ever. Out loud, in front of anyone. One sentence explaining that you're not what they say you are. And the balance zeros. Not deducted, zeroed. I opened my mouth. Yes, it's unfair, Hari said. Yes, it will make people think things about you that aren't true. Yes, you'll want to explain constantly, for months, and the wanting doesn't go away. It just gets easier to sit on. Egg? What? In the ramyeon. Egg or no egg? There's one egg. Then no egg for me, I'm being polite. She cracked it into the pot anyway, mine, and slid the whole thing over to me on the upturned lid because I own one bowl and it had cereal in it from Tuesday. I ate. She watched me eat with her chin on her hand, exactly the way Charon had watched me at Sowal, and it took me until the last mouthful to notice how differently it landed. So what do? I said. Markets. I read a board the way you read a bus schedule. She wiped her hands on my one towel. How much money do you have? 81,000. 81,001. I heard you the first time I was giving you a chance to be embarrassed and correct yourself. She was already scrolling on a phone that had not existed 30 seconds earlier. Fine. Open a brokerage account. Now, on your phone, I'll wait. And don't ask me what we're buying, because we're not buying anything. We shorted Taeyong Chemical. I'm not going to pretend I understood it that first week. Taeyong had a contract announcement coming, and every retail forum in the country was screaming buy. Hari looked at a shipping manifest, a Vietnamese customs page, and a company softball tournament photo from 4 years ago, and said the announcement was going to be a lie, and that the man who'd be blamed for the lie had already sold his apartment in Bundang. Day 1, we were down. Day 2, worse. On day 3, I sat in the warehouse, break room, with 62,001 left to my name, and had a small, honest conversation with myself about whether I'd gone insane in a basement. Day 9, Taeyong's announcement got postponed, and then got postponed again, and by the closing bell, the position was worth 340 million won. I threw up in the staff bathroom. Then I clocked back in and finished the shift, because I hadn't given notice and Mr. Cho had covered for me twice in June. Hari was sitting on my steps when I got home at 11. eating a triangle kimbap from my convenience store. You worked the whole shift, she said. You had 340 million and you moved boxes for 9 hours. I said I'd be there. She looked at me for a second longer than the sentence deserved. Then she stood, stretched, and stepped in close enough that I had to decide what to do with my hands. Okay, second rule. I'm required to tell you, and I like telling you. Her fingers landed flat on my chest, no pressure, just there. If you take me to bed, I stop being what I am. The money stops. I become a normal woman with a normal head and no bored sense at all. And you get to keep me and nothing else. Why would you tell me that? Because I want to see how long you last. She grinned up at me, absolutely delighted. Also because I'm bored. Chairman Yoon's daughter is going to spend the next year figuring out what she threw in a bin, and I've got a front row seat, and the seat comes with a bed. Want to check the math on that? I moved her hand off my chest and gave it back to her like a dropped glove. Boring, Hari said, entirely unbothered, and went inside to steal my blanket. You cannot buy shares in a group like Haesong with a face like mine attached to the paperwork. You need a wrapper. So on a Tuesday in April, I registered a fund. Yeon Moon, Hari said. Name it Yeon Moon. Why? Because it's the most forgettable word in Korean and nobody will ever bother to ask what it means. Seo Gil signed as nominal director. He read the whole document twice at his kitchen table in Suyu, with his reading glasses down his nose while his daughter made us barley tea and pretended not to listen from the doorway. This is a lot of money for a boy who took my 10,000 for the bus, he said. It is. You going to tell me where it came from? No. He nodded slowly, took the pen, and signed his name in the careful blocky handwriting of a man who has filled out 19 years of vehicle logs. Then he set the pen down and said, if it's the kind of money that comes with men at the door, tell me now so I can send my daughter to her aunt's. It isn't. Then I don't care where it came from. The lawyer was harder to find. 9 firms in Uedo told me to come back with a referral, which is a polite way of telling a 26-year-old in a supermarket jacket to leave. The 10th was 2 rooms above a dumpling place in Nowon, with a paper sign taped to the door, and the woman inside was eating lunch out of a plastic container at a desk with 3 files on it. Imdahi, 29, second-tier law school. First job gone after 18 months when she refused to sign off on something for a client her senior partner liked. She listened to all of it without writing anything down. Then she said, where does the money come from? I can't tell you. Then no. I stood up. Sit down. She put the lid on her lunch. I said no to answering. I didn't say no to the work. Come back tomorrow with bank statements going back 6 months, and if there's nothing in them from a person I'd have to report, I'll take it. And Mr. Lee, I bill by the hour, and I'm going to bill you for the hour you just took. I liked her immediately, which was inconvenient, because Hari made a noise like a kettle when I said so. First purchase, 0.8% of Haesong Group, bought in fragments across 11 days off 5 different sellers. 0.8%. On the shareholder registry, it looked like a rounding error, and it took every one I had. That was the night Hari sat on my floor with the ledger open and told me the 3rd rule, which she had been sitting on. Contempt intake is falling. We're up 80% this month. That's why it's falling. She turned the panel toward me. The gold number was there, 3,140, and it hadn't moved in 6 days. The system runs on people looking down on you. Right now, you're a warehouse kid in a basement, so it pays well. In 2 years, if this works, you'll be a man in a car. Nobody looks down at a man in a car. The better this goes, the less fuel you have. I sat with that for a while. Outside my window, somebody's shoes went past, then came back the other way. So the engine burns the road, I said. The engine burns you. She said it lightly, which was somehow worse. Every summon after this one costs 10 times the last. 10,000. 100,000. To get where you're pointing, you're going to have to go stand in rooms where people say things to your face, on purpose, over and over, and never once open your mouth. Okay. You said that fast. I've been doing it for free my whole life, I said. Now it pays. Hari laughed, and it was the first laugh anybody had aimed near me in a month that didn't have a phone behind it. Charon texted me on a Thursday. She'd said nothing for 5 weeks. Then at 1:06 in the morning, are you okay? 2 minutes later, Suel took the video down BTDU she hadn't. It was still up. It had 110,000 more views than the last time I'd checked. And somebody had made a sped-up version with a cartoon sound effect on the beep. At 1:19, my dad's been in a mood. It's not about you. At 1:31, say something. I sat on the edge of my mattress with the phone face up on my knee and watched the typing dots appear and disappear 4 separate times. She wasn't apologizing. I want that on the record because for about 90 seconds I let myself read it as an apology, and that 90 seconds is the most expensive thing I owned that month. She was checking. A person who leaves a bag on a train checks the platform, not because they missed the bag, but because they'd like to know it's still exactly where they left it. I didn't reply. Not out of strategy. I picked the phone up twice, and both times I got as far as the first word and put it down, and the word was always the same one, and it was always I. Hari didn't look up from the ledger. Registry closes at 4 tomorrow. If Kwan's block clears, we're at 0.8. It'll clear. Then go to sleep. You're doing the face. Which is how, 3 weeks later, I ended up standing in the grand hall of the Joseon with a glass of sparkling water at Yoon Charon's engagement party. I wasn't invited. I got in because the guest list was managed by an event agency, and event agencies hire per diem staff, and per diem staff will absolutely sell you a name badge for 200,000 won. I picked a name off the list belonging to a mid-tier logistics vendor who I'd confirmed was in Busan that week. 41 people in that room mattered. I counted them the way you count exits. Charon saw me at 8:20. She was in white, not a wedding dress, but the kind of white that's making an argument, and she froze for about a second and a half, which was the only honest reaction she gave anyone all evening. Kang Ji-ho got there first. Vice President of Strategy at Haesong at 31, which is a job you get the way you get a hereditary title. He came across the floor with his glass already tilted. "Oh no," he said loud, the way you say something you rehearsed in the car. "Did the caterers hire outside this year?" "Ji-ho," Charon said, from 10 feet back without much conviction. He poured the wine down my chest. Not a splash, he turned the glass over and walked it down my shirt from collar to belt like he was painting a stripe, and then stepped back to check his work. I've been hit before, being hit is easier. Being hit has a shape and an end. The room did its shift laughter thing. Hyo Sawuro was already filming from the side, and she'd angled herself for the light, because she is very good at her job and her job is being terrible. "Say something," Ji-ho said. "Come on. Say the thing about how much you paid for her school. Everyone's heard it." "Say it," wine dripping off my cuff onto the parquet. 41 people. And every last one of them looking at me with the exact face you make at an animal that got into the building. "One sentence, kid. Just one. Tell them." I put my glass down on the nearest table, right side up. "Unbelievable," Charon said, walking over at last, hugging her own elbows. "He came to eat. That's it. That's actually it." I turned around and walked out through the main doors, past the mirror, past the coat check, past a hostess who I think said sorry. The number was already climbing before I hit the street. Contempt, 3,200, then 3,900, then 4,600 as the video started moving. By the time the taxi crossed the river, it had stopped at 6,180, and under it, in that pale, patient gold, next summon, 10,000. I looked out the window at the bridge lights and did the arithmetic. Another 3,820 units of people telling me what I am. I knew where to get it. I'd been raised there. 3,820 units. Here's how you buy them. You go back to the warehouse. Not to work, I'd given notice by then, properly, 2 weeks, because Mr. Cho covered for me twice in June, and I'm not a barbarian. I went back on a Friday at shift change when 80 people are standing in the yard smoking, and I went in a suit. The suit was a mistake on purpose. Off the rack, slightly shiny, the kind a man buys for a funeral, and then wears to a wedding. In that yard it read like a costume. "Oh," said Jang, who ran the loading dock and had never once said my name correctly. "Look at this. Look at this." "Hi. Where'd you steal it?" Somebody wolf whistled. Somebody else said the word gigolo loud enough to carry, and then 4 people said it, and then it was a thing they were all doing together, which is what men in a yard do at 6 p.m. I stood there for 11 minutes and answered nothing. Contempt, 4,610. Then the university. I dropped out of Hanyang's economics program in my second year when my father's hospital bills stopped being a number and started being a schedule, and I still had 2 friends there. Technically, in the sense that they hadn't blocked me. I went to the department cafe on a Wednesday and sat down at their table. Song Woo-young took his backpack off the chair so I could sit, which was decent of him, and then spent 40 minutes explaining the job market to me in the voice you use for children and foreigners. "You could do delivery," he said. "Seriously. My cousin does delivery. He clears 3 million. That's good money, right? And there's no shame in it." He leaned in. "There isn't. That's what people don't get." His girlfriend was on her phone under the table, and I could see the video. Mine, the sped-up one with the cartoon beep. And she was watching it with the sound off while nodding along to what he was saying. 5,890. The last 4,000 I got from Charon's mother, which I want to be honest about, because it was the only one that cost me something. Mrs. Han runs a gallery in Sumcheongdong that sells 9 paintings a year and exists so that Chairman Yoon has somewhere to put people at dinner. She used to like me. Genuinely, she used to feed me. She used to say our Taejun in front of guests, and once, when I fixed the drip under her kitchen sink with a wrench from my bag, she told me her husband had never in 30 years touched a tool. I went to the gallery on a Saturday opening. 50 people, wine and plastic cups, everybody pretending to look at the canvases. She saw me. She came over fast, smiling, and for one whole second I thought it was going to be fine. Taejuna. She took my arm the way she used to. Then she walked me, still smiling, still holding my arm, past the sculpture and the drinks table, and all 50 of them to the door. You should be angry, she said quietly at the threshold. That's the part I don't understand. Anyone else would be angry. I'm not angry. Then you're worse than she said. She let go of my arm. She said you were kind. I told her at the time that kind is what women call a man when they can't think of anything else. And she cried and I let her have it. Don't come back here. It's not personal. She went inside. The door had one of those slow hydraulic closers, so I got to stand there and watch it take its time. Contempt. 10,000 divided by 10,000. Threshold reached. Summoning. She was already in my apartment when I got home, sitting on the one chair with her ankles crossed, going through my paperwork, which my apartment had a lock. I want that noted. Your funds articles have a drafting error in Article 6, she said, without looking up. Clause 4 contradicts Clause 2. If a director ever wanted to challenge a transfer, that's where he'd do it. Fix it this week. Who are you? Soyeon. She turned a page. Contracts. She was maybe 30. Gray suit, no jewelry, glasses she pushed up with one knuckle, hair pinned back so severely it looked like a security measure, where Hari filled a room by occupying all of it. This one occupied about 40 centimeters and made you come to her. Hari came through the door 2 minutes later with convenience store fried chicken and stopped dead. Oh, Hari said her. Good evening. She talks like a fax machine, Hari told me. Every word costs her money. Watch say something to her. Hello, I said. Mr. Lee. Soyeon nodded once. See? Hari sat down on the floor with the chicken. 5 weeks I've been here. She gets a chair. There is one chair, said Soyeon. I want to describe how she worked, because everything that happened for the next year came out of it, and because it was the first time in my life I watched somebody do something better than I'd known a thing could be done. I put the Haesong Taeyong supply contract in front of her. 206 pages. I'd bought it, not stolen, bought, from a mid-level clerk at Taeyong's legal department who had a gambling problem and a niece Hari had located in about 40 minutes. Soyeon read it in an hour and 11 minutes. She didn't take notes. She turned pages at a steady rate, and twice she went back. Then she put her finger on page 141, 14.3. That's a boilerplate cross default. It's a cross-true fault that references Schedule F. She flipped to the back. Schedule F was amended in 2021, and the amendment was never re-executed by both parties, which means the security interest over Haesong's Incheon terminal assets never validly attached to the 2021 facility. It attached to the 2019 one. Meaning what? Meaning the debt secured on Haesong's most valuable physical asset is held by whoever holds the 2019 paper. She took her glasses off and cleaned them on her sleeve, and it was the only human thing she did that night. Haesong believes Taeyong holds it because Haesong's counsel is a man named Baek, who has not read a schedule since 2016. Taeyong believes they hold it too. Both of them are wrong. The 2019 facility was syndicated. 40% of it sat with a savings bank in Daegu that failed in 2022, and the receiver has been trying to sell the tail for 2 years and nobody has bid, because nobody knows what it is. The room was very quiet. Hari had stopped eating, which for Hari is a state of religious awe. How much? I said. They're asking 1.1 billion won for a portfolio of distressed tales. 14.3 is one line item in it. Soyeon put her glasses back on. Mr. Lee, if you buy that portfolio and the Taeyong deal signs on schedule, you can call the cross-default 11 days after signature and take a security interest over the Incheon terminal. Haesong's 40 billion won expansion would be sitting on collateral you own. Hari made a low noise like a car starting. You're going to say something now, Soyeon said to her. So say it and we'll move on. I was going to say that's the sexiest thing I've ever heard a woman do in a suit, and I've heard some things. Hari licked her fingers. Buy it. Buy it tonight. We bought it on a Tuesday for 1,160 million won through Yeonmoon, with Im Da-hee handling the receiver and asking me exactly one question, which was whether I understood that distressed tales are usually worthless. I do. You don't, but you've said it, so we're covered. She stamped the last page. This is the 3rd time this month you've bought something a normal person would call garbage. I want you to know I've started a separate file for those and I've labeled it, and the label says Ask Later. The Taeyong deal signed on May 19th. Haezong put out a press release with a photograph in it. Chairman Yoon and Taeyong's chairman shaking hands, and Kang Ji-ho standing behind Yoon's left shoulder with his hands folded like a bodyguard in a drama. 11 days later, Yeonmun called the cross default. I wasn't in the room. I want to be clear about that too, because the version that got around afterward has me standing in the boardroom. And I was in a Paris baguette on Nowon Row, eating a cheap sandwich, while Im Da-hee sent the notice by courier, an email at 9 a.m. exactly. Here's what happened in the room as told to me later by 3 separate people who were in it. At 9:04, Baek, Haesong's general counsel, 31 years at the firm, the man who hadn't read a schedule since 2016, got the email and said out loud, "This is a mistake." At 9:20, he was still saying it. At 10:35, the Incheon Terminal's title report came back, and Baek stopped talking entirely and stayed stopped for the rest of the meeting, which is how you can tell a lawyer has understood something. At 11 o'clock, Chairman Yoon Gi-cheol asked the question he would end up asking, in various tones, for the next 14 months. What is Yeonmun? Nobody knew. It was a fund with a registered address above a dumpling place in Nowon, a nominal director named Seo Gil, and no website. Taeyong walked. Not immediately, they took 9 days to decide the expansion wasn't worth doing on land somebody else had a lien on, and then they walked. And the 40 billion won project died on a Thursday. Haezong's stock closed down 11%. The number in my room went up 400 that afternoon, off a single financial commentator on YouTube saying, "Somebody just ate the chairman's lunch, and I promise you it's not some kid. This is institutional." Even my wins were feeding on people underestimating me. I didn't decide how I felt about that. I just wrote it down. Kang Ji-ho decided it was Namyang Logistics. I got this later, secondhand, from Pyo Sewol, back when telling me things was the only currency she had left. She was good at it. She remembered rooms the way other people remember songs. 38th floor, the small conference room with the bad chairs. Ji-ho had a whiteboard. He'd written Yeonmun on it in English and drawn a box around it, and then drawn arrows out of the box to 4 company names. And he was standing back from it with his arms folded like a man in a documentary. "It's Namyang," he said. "It has to be Namyang. Who else wants the terminal?" "Nobody wants the terminal," said Sewell, who was there because the chairman's daughter's best friend gets to be in rooms. That's the point. Nobody's wanted the terminal since 2019, which is exactly what they'd want us to think. Sewell, to her credit, did not say anything for a while. "Send it to Chairman Yoon like that," she said finally. Say has to be, and exactly what they'd want us to think in the same paragraph. "That'll go well." Ji-ho capped his marker. "You have a better idea?" "I have a worse one, which is that it's real money and it's nobody we've heard of. And the reason we haven't heard of it is that we only listen to people we've already heard of." She turned her phone face down on the table. "Somebody read a schedule, Ji-ho. That's all that happened. Somebody read a schedule that Baek didn't. Somebody inside." And that Sewell told me this part twice, both times like she was still annoyed at herself for it. That was the sentence she watched land on him. She saw it happen. She said his whole face got easier, the way people's faces do when a difficult problem turns into an easy one about a person. "It's a leak," Ji-ho said. "It's a leak." "Fine. That I can find." He wrote leak on the whiteboard and underlined it. And then Ji-ho did the thing that changed the shape of the year. He went looking for a leak. Somebody at Haesong had to have handed the contract out, which was true. And the investigator he hired came back with a list of everybody who'd been separated from the company in the past 6 months. And on that list, 3 lines from the bottom was a driver. They caught Seo Gil in the parking lot of his own building in Suyu at 11 at night. 2 of them. They asked him who he'd been talking to, and he said nobody, and they asked again. His daughter found him at 11:40 sitting on the ground between 2 cars with his glasses in his shirt pocket, folded, because he'd taken them off first, fractured left wrist. 3 ribs. A knee that had already been bad and was now a scheduled surgery. I got to the hospital at 1:20 in the morning. He was awake. He saw me come in, and the first thing he did, before anything, was try to sit up straighter, because I was wearing a suit now and he'd been a driver for 19 years, and his body did it before his brain could stop it. That's the moment. If you want to know when I stopped being a man who'd been dumped in a restaurant, it's that. Not the terminal, not the wine. A 61-year-old man with 3 broken ribs straightening his back for me. "Don't," I said. "It's nothing." He waved his good hand. "They were young. Young men hit like they're afraid of their hands. Who sent them?" "Nobody said." He looked at the ceiling. "They asked about a contract. I don't know anything about a contract, so it was a short conversation, all things considered." His daughter was in the corner, and she hadn't said a word to me since I came in. And she didn't say one now, which was fair. Hari showed up at 2 with coffee for everyone, including the nurse. Swayon showed up at 3. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't bring flowers. She walked to the end of the bed, put a folder on the blanket, and said, "Mr. Seo, your termination was recorded as voluntary resignation." It wasn't. That misstatement is worth about 18 months of back pay plus statutory damages. And separately, this, she tapped the folder, is an industrial accident claim. Because at the time of the assault, you were a director of a fund, and directors are covered, and I registered you as a director on April 2nd, which is 11 days before the assault. Sign the third page and the second to last. Seo Gil looked at the folder for a long moment. "You put me down as a director to make me a person somebody has to answer for," he said. "I put you down as a director because the fund needed one." Swayan clicked her pen and held it out. "Third page." He signed. When she left the room, she didn't say goodbye. I followed her into the corridor, and she was standing under the vending machine, light rearranging documents in her bag that did not need rearranging. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "You knew what he needed. I know what claims exist." She pushed her glasses up. "Mr. Lee, please go back inside. He'll want you there when the pain medication wears off at 4 and he's less charming." She left. I stood there for a while in front of a machine that only had barley tea and grape juice in it. Hari came home with me that night and didn't leave. I need to write this part accurately because I've heard 3 wrong versions of it. One of them from a woman who was in the room. We got back at 5 in the morning. She poured herself into my one chair sideways with her legs over the arm and started talking about Inchin terminal valuations. And then somewhere around the 4th sentence, she stopped talking. "You didn't eat," she said. "I'll eat." "You said that at 9. She got up. There wasn't anywhere to go in that apartment. 3 steps was the whole floor plan. So she crossed it and stood in front of me, and then she took my tie off. Just slid the knot down and pulled it out of the collar and dropped it on the floor. "Hari, 2 things are true." She started on the top button. 1, I'm doing this because I want to. 2, I'm also doing it because it's the last thing anybody expects a man in your position to survive, and I'd like to know which kind of man I signed on with. Both of those are honest. You can pick either. You'll stop being what you are. Yes. And the money stops. The money stops. Second button. She wasn't smiling anymore, which was the part that got me. You'd have 340 million. A lien on a terminal, a broken driver, and a normal girl who's bad at everything except talking. And I want you to notice that when I said that out loud, you didn't move. I hadn't. That's the true part. I stood there and let a woman unbutton my shirt in a basement in Siloam, and I did not move for what I later worked out was about 9 seconds. Then I put my hand over hers and stopped it. No. Because of the money. Because you already know the answer or you wouldn't have made it a test. Hari looked up at me. Something went across her face that I didn't have a name for then and wouldn't have one for until much later. "That's the wrong reason," she said, "but it's the right answer." And she picked my tie up off the floor, hung it on the doorknob, and went to sleep on the mattress with all her clothes on while I sat in the chair until it got light. At 8, Swayan came by with the amended articles. "You look unwell," she said. "Long night at the hospital." "Yes." She set the papers down, squared them, and did not look at the tie on the doorknob or the woman asleep 3 feet away. "I'll leave the red line. Article 6 is fixed." She got to the door. "Mr. Lee, when you lie, you answer faster than the question needs. It's the only tell you have. I'd correct it before you're in a room with people who charge for it." The door shut. I sat back down. Hari, from the mattress, without opening her eyes. "She's not wrong, you know, about the tell. Go back to sleep. Ask her about the rules sometime," Hari said, and rolled over. Charon found me on June 11th outside the Yoido branch of a bank I'd never had an account at until that spring. She'd been waiting. That was obvious from the coffee, which was cold, and from the fact that she'd parked in a bus lane. "You're hard to find," she said. Hari was 2 steps behind me, and Soyeon was 3 steps behind her. Both of them stopping when I stopped, which is a formation that means something to anyone who's ever seen it in Yoido. Charon looked at them for a long moment. Then at me. Then at my watch, which was not expensive, but was not a warehouse watch. "Can we talk alone?" I didn't answer. "Fine." She hugged her elbows, which she does. "My father's under a lot of pressure. The Taeyong thing. He doesn't handle it well. He gets small about it. He goes after people. And I've been thinking about that night. At Sowal. I've been thinking about it a lot, actually, and I know how it looked." "Say it," I thought. "Say the actual sentence. Say I did that to you, and everybody was drinking, and Swole edited it in a way that made it, you know. And you didn't say anything, which honestly made it look worse if you just said something." There it was. "We could start over," Charon said. "Properly. I'm not with Jiho. That's a family thing. That's not real. Everyone knows it isn't real." I stood there. Rule 1. 1 sentence in my own defense, and the whole ledger zeros. Every unit from the yard, from the cafe, from Mrs. Han walking me to the door with her hand on my arm. 4 months of standing in rooms, so I said nothing. And I want to be precise about what that cost, because people think it was easy for me by then, and it was the hardest one. She was standing close enough that I could smell the shampoo she'd been using since university. Sharon waited. Then her face did something I'd seen exactly twice before. Both times when a professor had marked her down. Okay, she said softly. Okay, I get it. You're doing a bit. She almost laughed. You're punishing me. The suit, the two of them, whatever this is, it's a bit, and you're going to keep it up until I'm properly sorry, and then you'll drop it. She pulled her keys out. I know you, Taejun. You're the man who fixed my mother's sink. You'll drop it. She got in the car and pulled out of the bus lane without signaling. That went well, Hari said. Contempt. 26,400. Imda Hee moved the office in July. Same building, 1 floor up, 3 rooms instead of 2, and she put her name on the door in vinyl letters instead of paper. She also bought a second desk, which she sat behind and refused to explain. You're at 11.4% of a listed company, she said. Under the Capital Markets Act, you had a disclosure obligation at 5. You filed it. Nobody read it because you filed it correctly and boringly, which is the single best trick in Korean finance. So we're fine. You're fine until somebody at Haesong asks the exchange for the filing, and then a person's name gets printed next to 11.4%, and the name is Seo Gil, retired driver. Suyu Dong. She let that sit. How's his knee? Surgery's the 22nd. Move him off the directorship before the 22nd. She wrote it down. Not because of the law, because the next 2 men they send won't ask him about a contract. I said I'd think about it. Mr. Lee. She put the pen down. You've got 3 women who show up at my office at odd hours, and none of them have ID numbers I can verify. I've stopped asking, but I want one thing on the record between us, and then I'll never bring it up again. If you get somebody killed, it won't be a woman in a suit. It'll be the old man who signs where you tell him that night. Soyeon came by with the transfer documents already drafted. She dated them for the 15th. You spoke to Dahi, I said. I read the filing. She squared the pages. She reached the same conclusion. It isn't a difficult conclusion. Hari says I should ask you about the rules. I hadn't planned to say it. It came out flat, in the middle of a room while she was straightening paper. Soyeon's hands stopped for about 1.5 seconds. Then they went back to the stack, got the edges level, and squared them again. Hari has been here longer than I have, she said. She's entitled to an opinion about what order things get told in. That's not an answer. No. She slid the pages across. Sign the second page. To get to 100,000, I had to go on television. Voice of Small Business airs at 11 p.m. on a cable channel nobody admits to watching. And the format is that 4 panelists sit in a semicircle and give feedback to a young entrepreneur. It is a humiliation delivery system with a studio audience, and I applied under my own name with a 2-page description of a logistics fund with 340 million won under management. The producer called me back in 40 minutes. I understood why later. By June, my face had a second life on the internet, and the beep from the card reader had become a sound effect people used in unrelated videos. They put me in a gray blazer under lights that make everybody look damp. The lead panelist was a man named Ha Jae-won, who had sold a delivery app in 2014 and had been living off that sentence ever since. He started warm. They always start warm. So, Taejun Sesai, 340 million, that's real money for a young man. Where'd it come from? Trading. Trading, he smiled at the audience. Right. And before that, you were at, sorry, it says here, Distribution Center, Gimpo? Yes. See, this is what I love about this show. He turned in his chair. This is a guy who's hungry. Now, can I be honest with you? Because there's no point in me being here otherwise. Please, you're not an investor. You're a man who got lucky on a short and is now wearing a jacket about it. A ripple through the audience. And the reason I'm being hard on you is that in 6 months you'll be back at the warehouse and you'll have told everyone in your life that you were a fund manager. And that's a worse day than the one you had at that restaurant. Somebody in the audience made an ooh sound. Sorry, was that too far? The restaurant thing? Jae-won spread his hands. Everyone's seen it. He knows everyone's seen it. Look, I'll say what nobody says. That girl didn't leave you because you were poor. She left you because you were comfortable being poor. There's a difference, and you're still not hearing it. 300,000 people watched it live. 2.6 million watched the clip. I sat in that chair under those lights and said nothing except, thank you for the feedback at the end. And I said that at a normal speed because I'd been practicing. Contempt. 104,300 divided my 100,000 threshold reached. Summoning. She was waiting in the parking garage, sitting on the hood of a car that wasn't mine, swinging her feet like a kid at a bus stop. Small, round face. Cardigan the color of strawberry milk. Hair in a clip. A cup of something with tapioca in it. Oh, she said, and slid off the hood and hugged me. Full body arms around the ribs, cheek against my chest in a parking garage 6 seconds after existing. You did so well. You didn't even flinch when he said the thing about the jacket. Who? Mireille? Negotiation. She let go, then took my arm instead. I'm the fun one. Hari says she's the fun one, but Hari's the mean one. And Soyeon is the scary one, so I'm the fun one by process of elimination, which is a negotiation, so, see, I'm already working. She walked me toward the ramp, holding my arm with both hands. I'm going to be so useful to you, Mireille said happily. Minority shareholders, old men with 4% who hate the chairman and have never once been asked a question about it. I'll get you 6 of them by August, easy, and you won't have to say a single word, which I know is your whole thing. She stopped at the top of the ramp. Streetlight coming down on both of us. She was still smiling. Then she went up on her toes and put her mouth next to my ear and said, very sweetly, also, Soyeon is lying to you about the rules. She's been lying since the night she got here. Ask her what happens to a goddess who doesn't want to go back. I asked Soyeon about the rules the next morning, and she told me to be at the office at 9, and then she wasn't there at 9 or at 10. And when she came in at 11, she had a list of 6 names. So that's how that went. The 6 names were old men. Mireille had picked them out of the shareholder registry the way you pick chocolates out of a box slowly, and with her tongue between her teeth. Everybody goes for the funds, she said, upside down on my chair with her feet over the back of it. Institutions. Pension money. That's fine. That's 4% here, 3% there, but it takes 8 months and a compliance officer named Mr. Bang. Meanwhile, there are 11 men over 70 who own between 1 and 4% each, and Haesong has not asked any of them a single question since 2011. Because their votes don't matter. Because individually their votes don't matter. She rolled off the chair. Also because they're old and it's boring to talk to old men, and everybody at Haesong is 34 and in a hurry. The first was Kwon Byung-jo, 81, 3.1%. A shipping man who'd sold his coastal fleet to Haesong in 1998 and taken paper instead of cash. His house was in Ilsan, 1 story, with a yard full of pots. He opened the door himself, looked at my suit and said, "You're not selling anything, are you?" in the tone of a man who has bought 4 water purifiers he didn't need. Mireille got past him in 9 seconds by asking about the fish tank in the front room. It was enormous, 2 meters, professionally lit, with a filtration setup that had clearly cost more than my car. She crouched in front of it with her hands on her knees and asked what the yellow one was called. 4 hours, I sat on a sofa with a cup of barley tea going cold in my hands, and I listened to a woman who did not exist 5 weeks earlier ask an 81-year-old about angelfish. She never once mentioned shares. She asked what he fed them. She asked whether the yellow one had always been the aggressive one. She asked how long the tank had been running, and he said 19 years, and she said, "That's longer than most marriages." And he laughed so hard he had to put his cup down. Somewhere in the 3rd hour, he started talking about 1998. They came to me with an offer and I said no twice, he said. Then a man came out to the yard in Mokpo in the rain. Not a lawyer. He came out himself and stood in the rain and looked at the boats. He knew the tonnage of every one of them without asking. That's rare, Mireille said. That's unheard of. Kwon turned his cup around. So I took paper instead of cash. Everyone told me I was senile, and I've held it 27 years because I gave a man my hand in the rain, and every year since 2004 I've thought about selling it, and I never did, and I can't tell you why. What was his name? I said. It was the first thing I'd said in 2 hours, and it came out too fast, and I saw Mireille's shoulder move a half centimeter, which is how she tells you to shut up. Park, said Kwon. Park somebody. It was a long time ago. Mireille came out with the block optioned at a 9% premium and a Tupperware of his wife's kimchi. He didn't ask a single question about the fund, I said in the car. He asked 11 questions about the fund. Mireille was eating the kimchi with her fingers. He asked them all about the fish. What do you feed it? How long have you had it? Does it get along with the others? He's 81, he's not stupid. He just doesn't do it in the order you'd do it. 6 blocks in 11 days. Kwon at 3.1. Ma Sunok at 2.4, the Jeong brothers at 1.9 between them, a retired professor named Hwang at 0.8, and a dentist in Daejeon nobody at Haesong could have picked out of a lineup who had, for 30 years, quietly owned 2.2% of a listed group. August 4th, Yeonmun crossed 12%. August 6th, Chairman Yoon Gichul learned my name. He didn't call me. He summoned me, which is different. And he did it through a Haesong vice president who phoned Im Da-hee's office and used the phrase, an opportunity to resolve this in a civilized way. They put it in the multi-purpose hall on the 4th floor. That was the tell. You settle a shareholder dispute in a conference room with 6 people. You use a hall with 240 seats when you want the resolving to be watched. There were about 90 people in it. Department heads, the whole strategy division, 2 men from Haesong's PR agency with a camera on a tripod at the back and the little red light on. Charon sat in the second row. Jiho sat at the front with his ankle on his knee. They'd put a single chair on the floor in front of the stage, facing up at the panel table. I looked at that chair for a second and then went and sat in it. Because there's no version of not sitting in it that plays well. And because I was there for the 90 people. Chairman Yoon came in 6 minutes late. Lee Tae-jun, he said into the microphone. 90 people turned. You're the one who's been buying my shares. I said nothing. 12%. Through a fund registered above a dumpling restaurant. He let the laugh happen. Now, I've had 4 separate people tell me you're a criminal, and I don't believe it, because I've had you checked, and what you actually are is a boy who got lucky once and has been spending it very fast. He put his reading glasses on and looked at a page. 340 million on a short. Then a distressed debt portfolio nobody wanted. And I'll admit that one was clever, though I understand you had help. And 12% of my company, which is currently the worst investment in the Republic of Korea, because my company is going to be fine, and you have bought at the top of a bad month. Some of the strategy people were writing this down. The camera light was steady. So here's what I'm going to do. Chairman Yoon took his glasses off. I'm going to offer you a job. Director, New Business Development. Salary of 180 million, a car, and a 2-year contract. You'll report to Kang Jiho. Jiho at the front uncrossed his ankle. You'll sell me your position at your average cost so you don't lose a 1. And you'll come inside and learn how this is actually done. From people who've been doing it since before you could read, he leaned into the microphone. I'm not doing this out of affection. My daughter treated you badly at a dinner, and my company took a bad quarter. And I'd like both of those things to stop being in the newspaper. This is the most generous thing anyone will ever say to you, Tae-jun. I'd take a moment with it. 90 people? And every one of them settled back a half inch in their seats because a story had just resolved in front of them. The boy from the video was going to be looked after. Charon was crying a little in the second row. Quietly. With dignity, one hand at her collarbone. I saw 2 people notice her doing it. Well, said Chairman Yoon. I stood up. No, thank you. It's not a long line. It took less than 2 seconds. And I want to be exact about the room because I've thought about it 100 times since. There was no gasp. Nobody gasped. What happened was that 90 people went completely silent at the same moment. And then, about a beat later, somebody's chair creaked, and that creak was the loudest sound in the building. I don't think you heard the number, said Chairman Yoon. I said nothing. 180 million won. He said it slower. Plus the position at cost, you would walk out of here having lost nothing and gained a career. Nothing. He waited. He was a man who had never in 40 years had to fill a silence himself, and he filled it, and it cost him. You want more money? Nothing. You want an apology? He laughed. And it came out wrong, half a note too high. That's it, isn't it? You want my daughter to stand up in front of these people and apologize to you for a dinner bill? I turned around and walked up the aisle. I got 9 rows before he did it, and I knew he would. I'd bet a lot on him doing it, but knowing didn't make the sound of it smaller. You were a warehouse hand. 90 people, a camera, a chairman standing up at a panel table with a microphone still live in his fist. You loaded boxes. You were standing in a jacket you bought last month telling me. I kept walking. The doors were the heavy kind, and I had to push both of them. Contempt, 118,600. The PR agency did not publish that footage. Somebody else in the room did at 6:12 that evening from a personal account. And by midnight, Chairman Yoon shouting the word warehouse was a 14-second clip with 2 million views and a sound effect layered under it. The card reader beep. Somebody had layered the beep under it. Charon came to Noan on the Thursday. She'd never been north of the river in her life, as far as I know, and she stood in the stairwell above the dumpling place in a coat that cost more than the building's monthly rent, holding a paper bag. Dahi let her in, and then found a reason to be somewhere else. You didn't have to humiliate him, Charon said. He offered you a job. She put the bag on the desk. It had a lunchbox in it, homemade, 3 tiers, the kind her mother's housekeeper makes. That's what he does when he's sorry. He doesn't say it. He can't say it. He offers a thing. He offered my uncle a dealership once for exactly the same reason. And my uncle took it, and they had dinner every month for 9 years. The lunchbox sat there between us. You know he hasn't slept, she said. He gets up at 3 and stands in the kitchen. He's 62. I looked at the bag. Here's the thing nobody tells you about the rule. It isn't hard when they're shouting. When Ha Jae-won told 2.6 million people I'd be back in a warehouse in 6 months, I sat in that chair and felt nothing at all. You can hold your breath through a shout. It's the quiet ones. It's a woman putting a lunchbox on your desk, and telling you her father stands in the kitchen at 3 in the morning. Because the true sentence was right there. 2 seconds. He didn't offer your uncle a chair on the floor of a hall with a camera at the back. I didn't say it. Charon waited, and then something happened that I hadn't seen before, which is that she stopped performing. Her shoulders came down. She looked around the room, the second desk, the boxes, the grid of paper, the window that looks at the back of a dumpling place. And for about 4 seconds, she was just a 26-year-old woman standing in an office and no one. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do you understand? Nobody has ever not answered me in my whole life. I don't know what you're doing. She left the lunchbox. I ate it. All 3 tiers that night, alone at that desk. And it was very good, and I've never told anyone that until right now. Contempt. 121,900. Soyeon made her first mistake in the last week of August. It was small. It was a definition. Business day in a share purchase agreement for the Daejeon Dentist's block, drafted to include Saturdays where the previous 9 had not, which moved a payment obligation by 2 days. Im Da-hee caught it, apologized for catching it, and then apologized again for apologizing. It's fine, Soyeon said. It's a 2-day slip on a settlement. It's genuinely fine. I said it's fine. She left the office, and I found her 4 minutes later, standing at the end of the corridor by the window that looks at the back of the dumpling place, doing nothing at all, just standing at a window with her glasses in her hand. You don't make mistakes, I said, evidently. Soyeon. She put the glasses back on. There is a proportional relationship, she said to the window, between what I am and what I'm useful for. That's the whole of it. When the relationship changes, the usefulness changes first. And it changes in small ways, and the small ways are definitions and dates. Changes because of what? She turned around. Because of you, Mr. Lee. Obviously because of you. I don't know why you'd ask a question you already have the answer to unless you wanted to hear it out loud. And I'd rather not do that today. Murray says you lie about the rules. Soyeon's hands went still on her glasses. Which rules? She said to ask you what happens to a goddess who doesn't want to go back. The corridor was very quiet. Down in the alley, somebody was breaking down cardboard boxes, and the sound came up through the window in a slow rhythm, and Soyeon listened to about 6 of them before she spoke. Ari told you the price. If you take one of us to bed, we stop. She held one hand flat. That's true. It's also the whole of what she believes, because she came first, and nobody had told her anything either. What she couldn't tell you is where the stopping goes. Meaning what? Meaning we're not employees, Mr. Lee. We don't clock out. When the arrangement ends one way or another, the thing that was borrowed goes back to where it was borrowed from. She put the glasses on. There are 2 doors. Through one of them you keep a woman. Through the other one there's no woman at all because there never was one. There was a debt with a face on it. Which door is which? That, said Soyeon, is the part I don't know and the part Mireille is enjoying, and the reason I've said nothing for 4 months. She squared a stack of paper that wasn't there. I'd rather be a useful liar than an honest guess. She went back to the office and worked until 2 in the morning and did not make another mistake for 6 weeks. 2 days later, I put her name on the board. Yeonmun had a board of exactly 2 people at that point, me and a retired driver in a knee brace, and at the September investment committee, I moved Seo Gil to advisor per Dahee's warning and appointed Soyeon as director. Then I did the part that wasn't necessary. I moved the chairs so hers was at the head end of the table next to mine, and I sent the minutes to every counterparty we had. She read the minutes twice. This is a governance document, she said. You've used it to make a gesture. Yes. Everyone who receives it will assume we're sleeping together. Yes. Soyeon looked at the page for a while longer. Article 12 requires the director's specimen signature, she said, and signed it. And her signature, I'd never seen it before, turned out to be enormous, loose, nothing like the rest of her, the handwriting of a completely different woman. Hari, from the doorway, watching all of this with her arms folded, said nothing whatsoever, which from Hari is a paragraph. Pyo Sewo went to the press in September. Not a newspaper. She was smarter than that. She gave it to a finance YouTuber with 400,000 subscribers, in a package, with photographs, me leaving the Joseon with Hari, me at the hospital with Soyeon, me and Mireille on the parking garage ramp with her hands on my arm. The video was called, Who Actually Owns Yeonmun? And the thesis was that a warehouse worker does not accumulate 12% of a listed group in 5 months, and that the actual money belonged to one or more wealthy older women, and that Lee Taejin was what he had always been, which was a kept man who had made the mistake of getting expensive. It ran 19 minutes, 2.4 million views in 4 days. The comment section did something I hadn't expected. It got sympathetic to Charon. 40,000 people worked out in public that she had dumped a man for being poor, and that this had been correct because the man had gone and become poor in a more embarrassing way. Mrs. Hahn's gallery put out a statement. My old university's economics department got asked for comment and gave one. I read all of it. Every comment, for 3 days, in a rented office above a dumpling place, with a spreadsheet open on the other monitor. Contempt. 341,000. Hari found me at 4 in the morning on day 3 and closed my laptop with one finger. You're not doing this for the number anymore. It's 400,000 units in a week. Sure. She sat on the desk. And you've read the same 3 comments 11 times, and one of them is from a man called Chicken Lover 9944. So, not for the number. They're not wrong about the shape of it, I said. That's the thing. If you laid it out on a page where the money came from, who's around me, what I've never once had to explain, they're not wrong about the shape. Hari was quiet for a second. No, she said, they're not. Which is not what I wanted her to say, and is the reason I remember it. Pyo Sewol came to see me herself on the last day of September, which surprised everyone, including her. She picked a coffee place in Yoljiro with 3 exits and sat facing the door. I'm not apologizing, she said before I'd sat down. Okay? I want that clear. I did the video, I gave him the photos, I gave him the timeline. I wrote about half his script and he paid me an exposure, which is what people pay me in. She stirred something she wasn't drinking, but I've been in PR for 4 years and I've never had one land like that, and I want to know what I did. You told the truth. I told a shape, she said it fast, like she'd been carrying it. The shape is right. Warehouse hand, no education, 3 women, 12%. Every single fact in that video is checkable, and I checked them all. And it's still wrong. And I've been sitting with Y for 3 weeks, and I'm asking you because there's nobody else to ask. I didn't say anything because I couldn't. Sewol looked at me for a while. Right, she said. The not talking thing, Charon thinks it's a bit. It's not a bit. She put money on the table for a coffee she hadn't touched. Whatever it is, it's the most expensive thing in this room, and you're the only one who knows the price. Mr. Lee, for what it's worth. And it's worth nothing when it goes badly for them. And it's going badly. I'd like you to remember that I came and sat here first. She left. She'd been at the table 11 minutes. The 4th one arrived without being summoned. Or rather, the threshold for the 4th was 1 million, and I was at 341,000, and she showed up anyway, on the 29th of September. Sitting on the floor of the Neon office at 7 in the morning with 22 years of bank statements printed on paper and spread out across the whole room in a grid. She was small and about my age and dressed like someone who works in a records room, which, as far as I can tell, is what she was. Yuna, said Hari from the door in a voice I hadn't heard her use. You're early, said Soyeon. I'm not. The woman on the floor didn't look up. I've been here since 2004. He's just now got enough paper for me to stand on. She worked for 11 days. She barely spoke. She ate what we put next to her. She asked for 3 things: the Haesong pre-listing filings, the 2003-2005 corporate registry extracts, and a court archive index from the Seoul Southern District. And Tahi got her all of them, and then sat down on the floor next to her and started helping, uninvited, and stayed for 9 of the 11 days. On day 11, Yuna stood up for the first time and put a single sheet on the desk. There, she said. It was a corporate registry extract, printed small. Haesong Group, then called Haesong Transport Co. A change of representative director filed with the registry office on March 2, 2004. Out Park Munsu, in Yeongisyeol. That's a management change, I said. Companies change directors. It's not the change, it's the timing. Yuna put a second page down. The representative director changed on March 2nd. The share transfer that gave him control was executed on February 27th, and the seal certificate used to execute that transfer was issued on February 27th at the Yangcheng-gu district office at 9:20 in the morning. So Park Munsu died on February 26th, Yuna said, at approximately 11 at night. He hanged himself in the stairwell of the Incheon terminal, and it was in one newspaper, 4 lines. And the seal certificate that transferred his company was issued the following morning by someone who walked into a district office with his family register and his stamp. Nobody said anything. Yoon Gicheol wasn't a founder, Yuna said. He was the accountant. He'd been the accountant for 9 years. I want to describe what Hari did, because it took me a shamefully long time to understand it. She left the room. Not dramatically, she stood up and walked out to the corridor with the window that looks at the back of the dumpling place. And she stayed out there for about 20 minutes, and when she came back in her face, was doing the thing her face always did. Well, she said, that's a good day at the office. Hari, the lien's better than we thought. If the 2004 transfer is defective, then the pledge over the terminal that Munsu granted in 2003 never got released, because you can't release a security interest with a seal from a dead man, which means Hari, which means the paper we're holding is senior, which means you knew his name, I said, before Yuna said it. You said park somebody about Kwan's fleet in 1998 and you moved past it, and I let you, and I've been sitting here for 11 days working out why you'd bother to be vague about a name. Nobody in the room moved. Swayan had gone very still by the window. Yuna was looking at the floor. Mireille had her hands folded in front of her mouth, and I saw it, she was enjoying it, the way you enjoy a film you've already seen. Hari picked a paperclip off the desk and bent it out straight. You're going to ask me a question, she said, and I'm going to answer it. And after that, you don't get to think about me the same way, so I want you to be sure you want the trade. What are you? That's the wrong question. Ask the right one. What are any of you? There it is. She dropped the paperclip. We're not goddesses, Taejun. Nobody up there is watching you get insulted at parties and sending you helpers. There's no one up there at all, as far as I can tell. She looked around the room at the three of them. We're debts. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. Haesong owes something to somebody and hasn't paid it. And your thing, your counter, whatever it is, it goes and finds the oldest unpaid one and puts her in your kitchen. Debs. Unpaid ones, ranked. Hari smiled, and it was a bad one. I came first because mine's the oldest. I heard myself ask it. How old? February 26, 2004, said Hari. I was 6. He picked me up from school himself, because my dad couldn't. Nobody in the room said anything for a long time. Yuna quietly began stacking her grid of paper into piles, which was the kindest thing available to do. Say the rest, I said. There isn't a rest. It's 4 lines in a newspaper. Hari sat down on the edge of the desk. My father's terminal was leveraged, and the leverage was structured by his accountant. And in February of 2004, the accountant explained to him that there was one signature that would either save the company or hand it over, depending on which of them was telling the truth about a schedule. He signed, then he checked. Then he walked to Inchin. And I was at school. Uncle Gichul came at 4 and told my teacher there'd been an accident and bought me a hottie-oak on the way to the car. She said it evenly. He paid for my mother's apartment for 9 years, sent money at Chuseok, came to my middle school graduation and took photos. It's not the story people want. Nobody wants the man who ruins you to also drive you to school. But that's the one I've got. Where's your mother now? Died in 2016. Yes, I've checked. No, there's nothing there. Hari straightened the paperclip further, passed straight, until it kinked. And before you ask the next one, no, I didn't come to you. I don't get to choose. Your counter went looking for the oldest unpaid thing that company owed, and it found a school pickup in 2004, and here I am eating your ramyeon. That's not what I was going to ask. Then ask it. I had to think about how to put it. When I stopped you, I said, in the apartment. Was that you, or was that the debt? Hari looked up at me, and for the first time since April, I watched her not have a line ready. I don't know, she said. That's the honest one. I've been trying to work it out since June, and I can't get underneath it. There isn't a version of me that isn't this. If you scrape it off, there's a 6-year-old with a hottie-oak and nothing else. She dropped the bent paperclip in the bin. So don't ask me that again. Ask Soyeon. She likes questions with no floor. I'm going to go look at the pledge documents, because if the 2004 transfer is defective, then the paper we're holding is senior, and I'd genuinely rather talk about that. She went. Mireille watched her go with her hands still folded in front of her mouth. You could have let her finish being sad, I said. She wasn't sad. She was working, Mireille said pleasantly. That's what she does when she's well. You'll see it a few more times. Yeonmun crossed 19% on the 11th of October, 19.04 to be precise. And Soyeon had built the last 4 purchases so that we crossed on a Friday afternoon after the exchange's disclosure window, which meant the filing hit the wire at 8 a.m. on Monday morning, which meant Haesong's board found out about it in the same 40 minutes as the entire Korean market. 19% is not control. 19% is a veto. At 19%, I could block a merger, block a capital increase, block a sale of major assets, and force items onto the agenda of a general meeting, and there was nothing whatsoever that Chairman Yoon Gicheol could do about it, except buy me out or dilute me. And both of those cost money he no longer had. Because the Taeyong deal had died and the stock was down 31%. At 8 a.m. on Monday, Haesong's stock jumped 9% because the market decided somebody was mounting a takeover. At 10:15, Baek, the general counsel, recommended an emergency capital increase. At 10:40, Chairman Yoon Gicheol left the building without telling his secretary where he was going. Hari tracked the car. Not with any magic. She called a valet at the Shilla who owed her, and then a second valet. He went to a building in Junggu with no company sign on it. 6 floors, and he was inside for 2 hours and 10 minutes. Backdusen Capital, Dahi said that night, with the corporate extract in front of her. Registered 2009. 2 directors, total disclosed capital of 100 million won, which for a firm like this means the real money doesn't come through the door with its name on. Whose is it? On paper, a man named Kim Tae-soo. She turned the page around. Off paper, I've got 9 loan filings across 4 Heesong subsidiaries going back to 2011, all of them personally guaranteed by the chairman. None of them disclosed in the group's consolidated accounts. Swayon read it over her shoulder and stopped halfway down. Mr. Lee. She put one finger on a figure. This is larger than the market capitalization of the company. Yuna, from the floor, without looking up from her grid. That's because the company isn't the asset, the chairman is. 2 days later, a courier came to the office above the dumpling place with an envelope, and inside it was a card, cream printed, no logo, and one line written on the back in fountain pen. Mr. Lee, I've read the filings. I don't think you're a criminal either. Lunch, Thursday, KTS. Murray read it over my shoulder and made a small, delighted noise. Oh, she said. Finally, a grown-up. Kim Tae-soo picked a place in Seosoman with 8 seats and no sign. And he was already there when I arrived 4 minutes early, which is a thing men do on purpose. 50s. Not tall. A gray cardigan under a jacket, reading glasses pushed up into his hair, hands like a man who had done something with them before he started doing this. He stood up when I came in, all the way up, and he waited until I sat. Mr. Lee, thank you for coming north of the river for me. He poured my tea before his own. I asked for you at 11:30 because the fish comes in at 11 and it's better in the first hour. That's the entire reason. There's no meaning in it. Thank you. Now I want to start by saying something and then I'd like to eat because I hate business over food. He set the pot down. You did the Schedule F thing yourself, didn't you? Not the fund, not a bank. You. I said nothing. That's not a trap. It's a compliment, and I'll take the silence as a yes. He almost smiled. I've had 11 people look at that structure since June and 9 of them still don't understand it after it's been explained. So let's have the fish. We had the fish. For 50 minutes he talked about a boat he was rebuilding in Tongyang and asked me 2 questions about warehousing that were better than any question anyone had asked me at Haesong, and never once said Yoon Gicheol's name. Then they took the plates and he put his glasses on. On Tuesday I'm going to acquire the whole of Haesong's senior bank debt, Kim Tae-soo said. 4 institutions. 11 facilities. I've been the guarantor's counterparty since 2011, and I'd rather be the creditor of record than a man holding a promise from a person who is having a difficult year. That's about 600 billion. 640. It's a poor trade, and I'm making it anyway, which should tell you how I feel about the guarantor. He turned his cup a quarter turn, which puts you and me in a room together, Mr. Lee, and I want to be direct about the shape of that room, because I've read enough about you to think you'd rather have it straight. You have 19% and a security interest over the Incheon terminal. I will have every one of senior debt in the group. You can block anything, I can call everything. Neither of us can move without the other. And one of us is going to get tired first. And I've been doing this for 26 years and I don't get tired. I'd like to buy your position. I'll pay a 40% premium to your average cost, and I'll do it in cash inside 2 weeks. No, right. He nodded, unoffended, and that was somehow the worst part. Then here's what I'd like you to understand. And it's the only unpleasant thing I'm going to say today. What I've read about you, the restaurant, the hall, the man on the TV, none of that has any bearing on this. I don't care where you were in March. A man who reads a schedule is a man who reads a schedule. He said it kindly. He meant it. That's the thing I need you to hold on to. I'm not going to insult you, Mr. Lee. I'm not going to have anyone follow you. I'm not going to talk to journalists about you. And if you hear that I've said something about your background, you should assume it's untrue and come and ask me. Whatever else this is going to be, it will be between 2 people who are good at the same job. He paid. He walked me out and shook my hand on the pavement in Seosoman with both of his. I got in the car and Hari looked at my face and said, "What happened?" "Nothing happened," I said. That's what happened. Contempt. 341,000, unchanged. It had been unchanged for 9 days. Here's what starving looks like, in case you ever have to watch it. It started with Yuna, because Yuna was the smallest. On the 12th of November, she was in the middle of a sentence about a 2007 subsidiary, and the sentence stopped, and she sat there on the floor with her finger on a page for about 4 seconds looking at nothing, and then said sorry from the top and started the sentence again from the beginning. By the end of November, she was doing it twice a day. Murray stopped being able to close. She'd go out to a shareholder and come back with the meeting having gone well, warmly, beautifully, and no signature. And she'd say next week and it would be next week again. Soyeon went last and least. And when it came for her, it came for the thing she'd have chosen to lose last. On the 2nd of December, she read a 19-page side letter and then read it again. And I watched her read the same page 3 times and put it down and pick it up. And Hari, on December 9th, at about 7 in the evening, was standing at the whiteboard drawing the debt stack, and her hand went through the marker, not dramatically. There was no flash. Her fingers closed on the marker, and the marker stayed where it was, and her hand kept going. A centimeter. The way your hand goes through steam, and the marker fell on the floor and rolled under the desk. Nobody in that room said a word. Hari looked at her own hand for a second. Then she crouched down, picked the marker up, normally, solidly, no trouble at all, stood back up and finished the diagram. Debt stack, she said. Senior 640, Taesu, from Tuesday. Then the terminal, us. Then the trade payables, then the pension, then equity, which is a rumor. Any questions? Hari, any questions about the diagram, she said. I tried to fix it the obvious way, which is the way an idiot fixes things. I went and got insulted on purpose. I went to a startup mixer in Gangnam where I knew 4 people would recognize me and stood by the drinks table until they did. I went back to the gallery in Samcheong-dong on an opening night and let Mrs. Han's assistant tell me the guest list was closed, twice, loudly. I let a reporter from an economics daily interview me for 90 minutes, and I answered everything in a way I knew would make me sound like a fool. And he wrote it exactly that way, and it ran on a Saturday with a photograph of me looking down. The counter moved 410 units in 3 weeks. It's not working, I said. It's working perfectly, said Soyeon. You're just no longer the person it's designed for. We were in the office at 1 in the morning, Yuna asleep on the floor with a coat over her. Murray gone somewhere for 2 days without saying where, which had started happening. Explain it. Contempt requires a gap. Soyeon took her glasses off and set them on the table, which she did roughly once a season. The man in Gangnam who said the thing about your jacket, he was performing for 4 people, and all 4 of them know you have 19% of a listed group, and he knows they know. He was being rude to a rich man. That's a different act. It has no weight, and it never will again. So the system's broken. The system is a scale, and you've climbed off the small end of it. That's not a malfunction. She rubbed the bridge of her nose. There's exactly 1 man left in the country who can still look down at you and mean it, and he's not going to because he's decided you're a colleague. Kim Tae-soo has starved us with good manners. I don't think he knows he's doing it. I think if he knew, he'd do it on purpose and worse. Then I go bigger, I said. The next threshold's $1 million. If I can't get it in a room, I get it in front of the country. Yes, said Soyeon. That's the answer. And I'd like you to notice that you reached for it in 9 seconds, and that you haven't asked what 1 million units of the entire Republic of Korea despising you would actually cost. I've been despised since April, by people who know you. She put her glasses back on. This would be by people who don't. It doesn't come off, Mr. Lee. There's no filing you can make to correct it. In 10 years, when this is finished and you've won, there will be a generation of men your age who will only ever know one thing about you, and it will be the wrong thing, and they will pass it to their juniors as a fact. Okay, you said that fast again, Soyeon said. She came to the apartment on the 14th of December. I'd moved by then, not far and not up much. A proper 1-bedroom in Silom with a window at eye level which I'd paid for in cash and felt strange about for a month. It was 11 at night. She hadn't called. She was in the corridor with snow on her shoulders and no bag, which I'd never seen. Soyeon without a bag was like Soyeon without hands. I'm going to say several things, she said, and I'd like to say all of them before you say anything. Because if you interrupt me, I'll organize it and it'll come out as a memorandum. Okay. Come inside first. It's a corridor. She came in. She didn't sit down. She stood by the counter with the snow melting into her coat, and she looked at the wall for a moment, and then she started. In August, you moved a chair. You put my name on a governance document and sent it to 11 counterparties, knowing exactly what they'd assume. And you did it 2 days after I made a mistake about a definition. And I have thought about that on approximately 400 occasions since. She kept her eyes on the wall. I don't know what I am. I've told you that. Hari thinks she's a school pickup in 2004 with a personality bolted on, and she's very nearly convinced me. But whatever the accounting says I am, I made a mistake about business days because of you. And a definition is the only thing I've ever been sure of in my existence, and something took it away from me and gave me you instead. I have run the trade 11 different ways. Here it is. If nothing changes, I stay useful for another year. Maybe 2, my usefulness degrades in the way you've watched it degrade. And at some point, I read a page 3 times, and you very kindly stopped giving me pages. And then whatever's underneath goes back where it came from, and neither of us will have had anything. Or she stopped. Or I stopped being what I am tonight, on purpose. And in the morning, I'm a woman with no contract sense and no idea how to be a person. And you have a fund and a debt fight with Kim Tae-soo and no lawyer. I have priced both. The second one is worse for you by an enormous margin, and I'm asking for it anyway. That's the whole memorandum. I'm aware it's badly reasoned. It's the only badly reasoned thing I've ever done, and I'd like it to be this. Then she looked at me. I want to write down what I actually thought, because the version people tell has me being noble. What I thought was, the side letter with Baekdusan is due on the 19th and nobody else can read it. That was the first thing. I'm not going to pretend it wasn't. The second thing was that she was standing in my kitchen with snow melting into a coat she hadn't taken off, because taking it off would have been assuming something, and that she had walked here in December without a bag, and that in 8 months I had never once seen her ask for anything. The 19th, I said. Yes, you've been thinking about the 19th this whole time. I finished the side letter on Tuesday, said Soyeon. It's in the office in the red folder. I did it 8 days early so this conversation could happen tonight instead of in January. I crossed the kitchen and took her coat off, which is the only thing in this entire story that I did without calculating first. In the morning, the red folder had 19 pages of her handwriting in it, and she couldn't read them. She sat at the desk in the office above the dumpling place at 9 in the morning, with her own work in front of her and turned the pages one at a time. And about halfway through, she stopped turning them. I know it's right, she said. I remember that it's right. I can't see why it's right. Dahi took the folder gently out of her hands. Then I'll check it, Dahi said, and it'll take me 11 days instead of a morning, and you'll sit there and tell me when I've gone wrong, because remembering that it's right is worth more than you think. Soyeon's glasses were on the table. She'd stopped needing them at some point in the night, and hadn't noticed until she reached for them out of habit, and then didn't know what to do with her hand. I'm sorry, she said. That's an inadequate word for a 19-page side letter. Yes, said Dahi, already reading. Sit down. Soyeon was bad at being a person for about 6 weeks, and then she was bad at it in a more interesting way. She overpaid for everything. She'd hand a note across a counter and walk off, and it turned out that in 9 months of existence, nobody had ever given her change. The first time a woman at a bakery put 401 back in her palm, she looked at it the whole way to the car. She got a cold in January and was outraged by it. Came into the office with a scarf on and announced, "There's a fault," and Dahi laughed until she had to leave the room. And she started putting things at the ends of sentences that had no legal content at all, which was the part that undid me. The Kwan block settles Tuesday. The dumpling place is doing the spicy ones again. One night in late January, I found her at the office window at 2 in the morning with the lights off, doing nothing. I'm told this is what people do, she said. Hari says I've done it 4 times this week and that it's a good sign. Is it? There's no test. She kept looking at the alley. Mr. Lee, I'd like to stop calling you that, and I can't find a replacement I'm able to say out loud. So I'm telling you about the problem instead of solving it, which I understand is also what people do. I said her name. Yes, said Soyeon, that one works. Hari didn't say anything to me that day, or the next. On the 3rd day, she came and sat on the edge of my desk with her arms folded. Well, she said, say it. I don't have anything. She actually seemed annoyed about it. I've been trying for 72 hours to build a line and there isn't one. I put my hands on you in a basement in May as a test, and she walked 11 blocks in the snow with no bag, and one of those is a better argument than the other. And I've never in my life been the one holding the worse argument. She got up. For the record, Hari said, if you'd said yes to me in May, we'd both have been living off 340 million and a lien, and Yoon Gi-cheol would have died in that chairman's office at 89 years old. So, well done, I suppose. Congratulations on your excellent judgment. She was at the door when she added it. She's happy, by the way, in case nobody's told you. It looks like nothing because she's her. But I've watched her stand at that window twice this week doing absolutely nothing at all, and she's never once in her existence done nothing. Mireille came back on the 22nd of December and told us in the doorway with her coat still on. I'm going to Baekdusan, she said. I start in January. He's offered me a role in workout and restructuring negotiation, and it's a real title with a real seal, and I said yes on Thursday. Nobody moved. You can't, said Yuna from the floor. I can, though. Mireille was smiling. Not cruelly, that's the part I want to get right. She wasn't being cruel, she was being cheerful, which was so much worse. That's the thing nobody's checked. Hari's a school pickup. Yuna's a records room. Soyeon was, well, we'll never know now, will we? But I'm a negotiation. And a negotiation doesn't belong to a person. It belongs to whoever's at the table. Sit down and explain it properly, said Soyeon. And Mireille's head turned like a bird's. Oh, she said. Oh, listen to you. You sound like a person, Mireille. No, I'm a loud one. Mireille came 2 steps in. I've been polite for 6 months. Do you know what I actually am? In 2013, Hee-sung put a supplier in Ansan through 14 months of negotiation on a payment that was never in dispute. 14 months of meetings. They wore him down and settled at 60%, and he signed it in a room and thanked them. And the debt they never paid was the 14 months. That's me. I'm not a dead man in a stairwell, and I'm not a 6-year-old with a hottie oak. I'm a process. She spread her hands. And you've been sitting here for 2 months starving. And the only man in Korea with any leverage left just offered me a floor and a title. And you all want me to explain why I said yes. He's using you to see inside this office, I said. Obviously. She looked genuinely delighted that I'd said it. And I'll tell him things, and he'll know they're true, and you should assume he knows everything I know as of Thursday. That's the honest version. I could have lied and stayed and told him anyway, and I want a medal for not doing that. She buttoned her coat. Taejin-sai, one free thing because I liked you. Murray's voice dropped out of the cheerfulness for the first and only time. Kim Tae-soo isn't waiting for you to get tired. He's waiting for the 24th of March. Don't ask me what that is, because I don't know, and he doesn't say it out loud. And I only know it's a date because his assistant reserves the whole afternoon every year and has done since 2010. Then she was gone, and the office was very quiet. And Yuna said, into the floor. She hugged me. In September, she hugged me every day for 2 weeks. She meant it, said Hari. That's what nobody gets about her. She meant every second of it. That's how she's good at it. Seo Gil found the garage on the 4th of January. He wasn't supposed to be doing anything. He was 6 weeks out of knee surgery, on a stick. And I'd moved him off the directorship in July, and put him on a consulting retainer that he'd complained about twice a month ever since because it involved no work. He'd been driving Yoon Gi-cheol for 19 years. That was the whole method. He had 4 places I took him where he never took anyone else. Seo Gil said on the phone. A dentist in Aichon. A grave up in Paju that isn't family. A Gosi one in Silim he owned and never sold. And a garage in Gwangyang. A garage. Twice a year, April and October. He'd go in alone with the key and be 40 minutes and come out with nothing. A pause and a sound like a man shifting his weight off a bad leg. 19 years, Taejun. 40 minutes, twice a year, nothing in his hands. You don't do that for a car. The building was a 2-unit lockup behind a paint shop, and the registered owner was a company that had been dissolved in 2006, which meant the property tax notices had gone to a dead address for 19 years, and nobody had ever once come to check. Dahi got a court order in 11 days on the basis of the defective 2004 transfer. We went on a Saturday morning, me, Dahi, Yuna, Seo Gil on his stick, and a locksmith who charged us for a Saturday. Inside were 41 bankers' boxes on steel shelving and a chair. That's the detail I keep coming back to. There was a chair in there, a plastic office chair, positioned in front of the shelves, facing them. Boxes were Park Mun-soo's, all of it. His working files from 1996 to 2004. The original terminal pledge, the 2003 syndication documents, the fleet purchase from Kwon Byung-jo with a handwritten note attached in a shipping man's handwriting about a man who stood in the rain. And in box 31, in a brown envelope, the original February 27th seal certificate application with the applicant's signature on it. Not Yoon Gi-cheol's. That's a woman's signature, said Dahi. Yuna took the page out of her hands, held it about 10 centimeters from her face, and then sat down on the concrete floor of a garage in Gwangmyeong very suddenly. I know this name, she said. She wouldn't say it out loud. She put the page in a sleeve and she said, not here, not in this building. And she carried it out to the car herself and held it on her lap the whole way back to Nawon like a woman carrying soup. That night she asked me for one thing. Yuna had never asked for anything. 9 months, and the total list of things she had requested was 3 sets of documents, and she'd said please for all of them. The 2007 records room, she said. Haesong Logistics, Bupyeong, there were 4 of us. In November 2007, the group needed to lose a set of delivery logs for a subcontractor injury, and they were physically in our room. And I said no, and then I said no in writing. Which was the stupid part. She was sitting on the floor as usual with her back against the shelving. They didn't fire me. That's not how it's done. They moved me to a satellite office in Gimpo with no records in it and no work. And I sat at a desk for 4 years and 8 months, and then I stopped coming in and they never sent anyone to ask. There's a claim. It's an old one, and everyone would tell you it's expired. But Haesong renewed the acknowledgement in 2019 in a settlement schedule because a compliance auditor made them list historical employment disputes, and a listed acknowledgement restarts the clock. She looked up. It's about 110 million won with interest. It's nothing. It's a rounding error against 640 billion. Then why are you asking permission? Because I want you to file it, said Yuna. and I want you to understand what it does before you do. Dahi filed on the 18th of January. Haesong's outside counsel, not Beck. Beck had been quietly retired by then, looked at it for a week and settled without a hearing. Because $110 million to make a thing go away is what companies pay for lunch. The money hit the client account on the 4th of February at 11:20 in the morning. Yuna was on the floor. She had been on the floor for 9 months, and the grid of paper around her was the reason we knew anything at all. She looked up when Dahi said the number out loud, and she smiled. That's the thing. She'd smiled maybe 5 times in 9 months, and she used one of them on that. Oh, she said. That's better than I thought. And then she wasn't there. Not a fade. Not a light. There was a woman sitting on the floor of an office with a page in her hand, and then there was a page on the floor of an office, still falling, and it took about a second and a half to land, and I watched it land. Nobody said anything for a very long time. Sit down, Soyeon said to me eventually, and then, when I didn't, she said it again in a completely different voice, not the lawyer's, and I sat down. Hari was standing at the whiteboard with her back to the room. She knew, I said. She knew in September. Hari didn't turn around. That's when she worked it out. She checked it against her own file for 4 months before she said anything to me. Because she wanted to be certain. Because she was a records clerk. And that's what a records clerk does with a thing that matters. She knew, and she asked me to file it. She knew, and she asked you to file it in January, Hari said, instead of in March or in June. She picked the date. Do the arithmetic, Taejun. You're good at arithmetic. I did the arithmetic. We were in a debt fight with a man who held 640 billion won of senior paper and who was waiting for a date in March. And our fourth chair had just paid herself out for 110 million and vanished, 7 weeks early, at a moment when the only thing her leaving accomplished was to prove the mechanism to me while there was still time to use it. She'd made herself the demonstration. Say the rest, I said. Hari turned around. Fine, here's the rest. And then I'd like to go and be somewhere else for an hour. She picked up the marker and didn't write anything with it. We're unpaid debts. Unpaid. That's not a description, it's a condition. Yuna stopped existing at the exact second Haesong paid her, and it wasn't a punishment, and it wasn't a mercy. It's just what a debt does when you settle it. It stops being a debt. Soyeon's still here. Soyeon's a woman, Hari said. Soyeon got out through the other door in December, which we all thought was the expensive one, and it turns out it was the cheap one, and none of us knew that, including her. And I've been sick about it for 2 days. Soyeon from the desk quietly. I'd like to note that I did not know that. Nobody's blaming you, you idiot. Hari's voice cracked on it. 1 syllable, and then she got it back. You're the only one of us who's going to be at a funeral. Take the win. She put the marker down. So, here's your position, and I've had it since September, and Yuna made me promise to give it to you the day she went. She said it flatly, the way she said debt stacks. You're going to take Haesong. You're going to make Yoon Gicheol pay what he owes. All of it. Every line. Because that's what you've built, and it's a good build, and I help. And every line he pays is one of us. His oldest unpaid debt is a terminal stairwell in February 2004, and a school pickup at 4 in the afternoon. When you finish this, when he pays that, I go, not before. That's the last line in the ledger. The office was very quiet. Then we don't collect that one, I said. Sure, leave it. Hari smiled at me, and it was the worst one yet because it was kind. Leave the 2004 transfer standing. It's the only thing that unwinds his title. Leave it, and you keep me, and he keeps the company. And he stands in his kitchen at 3 in the morning until he's 89 and dies in a chair with his name on a building he took off a dead man. Is that the offer? Because I'll take it, Taejun. I want you to know that about me before you decide. I would take it. She went out into the corridor with the window that looks at the back of the dumpling place, and she stayed out there for a long time. I sat and looked at the place on the floor where the grid of paper was, and where for 9 months, a small woman had eaten what we put next to her. Charon's engagement to Kang Ji-ho ended on the 9th of February, in a restaurant over money, which is a thing I'd have found funnier if I'd been a different man. The Kang family had a construction arm that had guaranteed one of the Haesong subsidiary facilities in 2019. And when Kim Tae-soo became the creditor of record, he did what any competent creditor does, which is send out demand notices to all guarantors in alphabetical order on the same Tuesday. Ji-ho's father received his at 2 p.m. and called off the wedding by 6. She came to Noan 4 days later. It was raining, and she'd taken the subway, which I know because her shoes were wet and there's no parking on that street, and she'd have told me if she'd had a car. You knew, she said. I didn't. Nobody had told me. But I said nothing, and she took the nothing as a yes, and I let her, and I'd do it again. She stood in the middle of the office for a while. He hasn't been to the building in 11 days, she said. My father. He goes to an office in Yunggu instead, and comes home and sits in the kitchen. He signed something. He won't tell me what he signed. And my mother stopped asking. And I found out from the dentist. Taejun, our family dentist, called the house because he'd heard. She stopped. Then Yoon Charin, who had never in her life not been answered, sat down on the floor of an office above a dumpling place in a wet coat. Not a collapse. She just went down and sat, with her back against the leg of Dahi's desk. In the way you sit when standing has stopped being worth it. I'll say it, she said. Is that what this is? Fine. I'll say it. I took your card out of your hand at that table because Sewol dared me at the bathroom sink, and I wanted to see if you'd make a scene because you never made a scene about anything, and it made me feel like a bad person to be around you. That's the reason. There isn't a better one. There's no version where my father made me or I was under pressure or any of it. I did it because you were kind to me for 3 years, and I couldn't stand it. The rain on the window. Somebody downstairs shouting an order for pork dumplings. Say something, Charin said. Please, one word. You can call me anything you want. I've thought of most of them. And here's the thing. I could have. The counter was at 342,000 and it had been dead for 11 weeks, and there was nothing left in the tank that a sentence would have cost me. Nothing. The rule was a formality by February. I could have opened my mouth in that office and said every true thing I'd been carrying since April, and the ledger wouldn't have moved a single unit. Because there was nothing left in her that could look down on me. I know that now. I knew it then, too. I didn't say anything. Hari, later, when I told her why, because I'd have felt better, I said. She thought about that for a second, and then she nodded slowly, and she didn't make a joke, and we never talked about it again. The Korea Finance Summit is held every March at the COEX in a hall that seats 1,200, and it is broadcast live on 2 cable channels and streamed on 4 platforms. And the reason it matters is that it is the one event of the year where the people who own things sit in a room and are asked questions by people who don't. I applied to speak in the Emerging Managers session on February 6th. They put me on the program in 9 days. They put me on the poster. They've moved you to the main hall, Dahi said, reading the confirmation. You applied for a breakout room with 60 seats, and they've moved you to the main hall and given you a panel slot at 2:40 in the afternoon, which is the best slot of the day. And Mr. Lee, nobody gets moved to the main hall in 9 days. I know, then say it out loud because I'd like it in the file. Kim Taezu made a phone call. Dahi put the paper down. Yes. The panel was called New Money, Opportunity or Risk, and there were 4 seats on it. Mine, a pension CIO, an academic, and announced on the 28th of February, after I'd already confirmed Baekdusan Capital, represented by their new head of restructuring negotiation. Hari read that email over my shoulder and let out a long breath through her teeth. He's not going to be there himself, she said. No, he's sending her, because she was in this office for 8 months and everybody watching knows it. She sat down on the edge of the desk. Taejun, he has never insulted you. He's been careful about it for 4 months, and he's put a woman who used to live in your kitchen on a stage in front of the whole country to do it for him. Which means it isn't him doing it, which means he still gets to shake your hand afterwards and mean it. Yes, you're going anyway. The counter's at 342, I said. It needs 1 million. There's one room in Korea where I can get 650,000 units in 40 minutes. Soyeon had been standing at the window and hadn't said anything for a while. I want to record that I'm against it, she said. Not as a lawyer. I don't have anything to say as a lawyer. The analysis is correct. The analysis is obviously correct. She turned around. I've been a person for 11 weeks, and I've spent 9 of them watching you build a machine whose fuel is people thinking you're worthless. And now you're going to go and top it up in front of 4 million of them. And there is no version of this where you come home the same. I know. Say something that isn't I know. I didn't have one. Then I'll be at the back, said Soyeon, on the aisle where you can see me. And when it's finished, we're going to go and eat something, and you're not going to look at your phone. They sat me second from the left. I'd been in the hall since noon because Murray had once told me that the person who arrives late is the person the room is waiting for, and the person who arrives early is furniture, and I wanted to be furniture. 1,200 seats, 1,100 filled. 2 cameras on jibs, 1 on a track, 3 fixed. The moderator was a business anchor named Ko Hyun-suk, who has interviewed 4 presidents and does not make mistakes. Murray came in at 2:31 in a navy suit with her hair up. She looked wonderful. I want that in here, because it would be easy to write her as something small. She stopped at my chair on the way to hers, put her hand on my shoulder, and leaned down. You worked it out, she said, delighted. You worked out what he'd do, and you came anyway. Oh, that's good. That's better than I had you at. Murray. Don't do a warm thing at me. I have 11 minutes of material. She squeezed my shoulder. I'm going to be very good at this. I want you to enjoy it a little. Because nobody else in this room is going to understand what they're watching. It started at 2:40. Ko Hyun-suk did 9 minutes of the pension CIO and 6 of the academic, and then turned, and the room turned with him. And the little red lights on the jibs came on. Lee Taejun SSI. Yeonmun Investment. 19% of Haesong Group in 11 months. Starting from, and I want to get this right, 81,001. Yes. How? Trading, then a distressed portfolio, then open market purchases. That's 4 words for a year. He waited. I didn't fill it. All right, then let me go to Baek Dusan, because you were at Yeonmun until January. Ms. Yu, is that how it happened? And Mireille smiled at 1,100 people and did it. No, she said. And I'd like to be careful here because I liked working there, and I'm not going to say anything untrue. The trading was real. The distressed purchase was brilliant, and I want that on the record. Somebody read Schedule F of a 200-page contract that 4 institutions had signed without reading, and that was worth every one it made. But it wasn't him. She turned her hands over. In 8 months, I sat in every meeting. I watched a woman named Soyeon read that contract in 71 minutes and find the clause. I watched a records clerk reconstruct 22 years of a company's filings off paper. I watched Kwon Byung-jo's block get bought by me, personally, in 4 hours over a fish tank. And in every single one of those rooms, Mr. Lee sat in the corner and said nothing. And I want you to understand that, I mean that literally. He said nothing. He has said nothing in public since April. Everyone has decided that strategy. She let it sit for exactly the right length of time. It isn't. I was there. He doesn't speak because he has nothing to add. And he has built a machine that makes that look like power. And every man in this hall under 35 has spent a year admiring it and calling it discipline. The hall made a sound, not a laugh. A sort of collective settling, 1,100 people simultaneously deciding a thing. That's a serious statement, said Ko Hyun-suk, who was enjoying himself now. It's a kind one. Mireille's voice went gentle, and that's when I knew she was going to land it. Because there's a harder version, and somebody's going to say it in the next 12 months. So it should be somebody who was in the room. Yeonmun is 19% of a listed group held by a man who did not build it, cannot explain it, and will not speak about it. That's not an emerging manager. In any other market that's a nominee, and everybody here knows the word for what a nominee is a nominee for. Ko Hyun-suk turned to me. 6 cameras turned with him. Lee Taejun SSI. Response? Here it is. 1,100 people in a hall. 4.2 million on the streams by the end of the day. Every fact she'd said was true. Every single one, and that was the craft of it. And I'd watched her do it to a fish tank man in Ilsan, and I still hadn't been ready. And the sentence was right there. I found Schedule F. 4 words. True, checkable. And it would have ended her in that room. And every man under 35 would have gone home thinking something different about me for the rest of their lives. Soyeon was at the back on the aisle where she said she'd be. No response, I said. Ko Hyun-suk waited 3 full seconds, which on a live broadcast is a geological era. Nothing at all? No, thank you. He moved on to the academic. I sat in that chair for the remaining 22 minutes of the panel with my hands on my knees while 1,100 people took photographs of me not talking. The clip was up before the panel finished. By 6 that evening, it had a title in 12 different variations, the most popular of which was Kept Man Says Nothing for 22 minutes. And by 11, it had 4.2 million views and the card reader beep laid under it. Because of course it did. Because that sound had followed me for 11 months and would follow me for 11 years. Contempt. 1,024,000 divided by 1 million. Threshold reached. And then nothing happened. Seo Gil called at 9:40 that night, which was late for him. I watched it, he said. Okay. My daughter watched it too. She wanted me to tell you that the comments are, he stopped and rearranged it. The way he rearranges things. She wanted me to tell you she turned them off. Tell her thank you. Taejun. A long pause with a TV going somewhere behind him. I drove that man for 19 years, and I never once told anybody what I thought of him. And I want you to understand that I could have, any day, any of 19 years, to any reporter in this country, and I'd have been believed because a driver is believed. Why didn't you? Because then I'd have been a man who talks about his employer, said Seo Gil. And I'd have had that instead of the 19 years. Another pause. It's not the same as what you're doing. I'm not saying it's the same. I'm saying I know what it costs to be quiet for a long time in front of people who think it means something else about you. And I wanted to say it out loud once to somebody who'd know what I meant. Then he asked about the knee brace deposit, which he had been asking about for 4 months. And I said I'd look into it, which I had been saying for 4 months. We waited 40 minutes in the office above the dumpling place. Nobody came through the door. Nobody was sitting on the floor. Hari kept looking at the corner where Yuna used to be. At 12:41 in the morning, the panel wrote one more line. Dept, number 5. Lee Sun-hee. Status living. Cannot be summoned. I read it 4 times. Taejun, said Soyeon, carefully. Who is Lee Sun-hee? That's my mother's name. The room did not move. My mother died in 2009, I said. I was 11. My father told me it was her heart. And there was no funeral because there was no money. And I've never seen a certificate. I've never once seen a certificate. He said it, and I was 11, and then he got sick, and then he died too, and there was nobody left to ask. Hari was already at the desk. Yuna's envelope, box 31. The seal certificate application, February 27, 2004. She said she knew the name and she wouldn't say it in the building. Where did she put it? Dahi had it in the safe. She'd had it since January, and she'd been chasing the guardianship trail for 6 weeks on her own, quietly, because Yuna had asked her to before she went, and because Dahi is the only person in this story who ever did anything without being asked twice. She put 3 pages on the desk. The first was the application. Applicant, Lee Sun-hee. Relationship to principal, employee, bookkeeper. The signature enormous and loose. Nothing like the neat hand on the rest of the page. The second was a guardianship order from the Seoul Family Court, June 2009, declaring Lee Sun-hee, born 1971, incapable of managing her own affairs. Petitioner, her employer's representative director. Yoon Gicheol. The third was a care facility registration in Paju, continuous since June 2009, fees paid quarterly by a company that had been dissolved in 2006. Seo Gil's list. A grave up in Paju that isn't family. He hadn't been visiting a grave. I want to write this part short because it belongs to me and not to a story. It's a low building with a garden and 11 residents and a woman at the desk who has worked there for 19 years and knew immediately who I was, because she had been waiting for someone to come since 2009. My mother is 54. She's very small. She does not manage her own affairs, and she has not for a long time. And the doctor's word for what happened to her in 2004 and 2005 is a long one that ends up meaning that a woman signed a document under pressure and then was made to understand that the document was the only reason she was still employed and the only reason her son was in school, and that she carried that for 5 years by herself, and then she didn't. She didn't know me. She was pleasant about it. She thought I was someone from the office, and she asked whether the reconciliation had gone through, and I said yes, and she was relieved. And she asked twice more in the hour I was there, and I said yes every time. On the way out, the woman at the desk said, he came 4 times a year. He sat in that chair by the window, and he didn't say anything, and he paid on time for 16 years. I always thought he must have loved her. I didn't correct her. March 24th, it turned out, was a birthday. Park Mun-soo would have been 61. There's a grave in Paju in the public section, and it has flowers on it every year on the same day, and it has had them since 2010. And Seo Gil had driven Yoon Gicheol to it 12 times without ever once being told whose it was. Kim Tae-soo had been putting flowers there for 15 years, because in 1996, a shipping man with no reason to do it had given a 29-year-old junior analyst from Baekdusan Row his first real book of business, and had never asked for anything back. I know because he told me himself on the 22nd of March, in the same 8-seat place in Seosomun, when he called me to lunch for the second and last time. I put the 41 boxes on the table between us. Not all of them, 6 pages. He read them the way Soyeon used to read, steadily, no notes, twice back. Then Kim Tae-soo, who had been polite to me for 5 months, took his glasses off and sat there for a while with his hand over his mouth. I have been the creditor of this man since 2011, he said eventually. I have restructured him 4 times. I have sat in his house. Yes, he talked about Mun-soo Hyung to me. At dinner, he used the word Hyung. He put his glasses on the table, very carefully, as if the table might mind. Mr. Lee, I want to ask you something, and I want you to understand that I already know the answer, and that I'm asking it for myself. The fund is mounting a defective title claim on the 2004 transfer. If it succeeds, and it succeeds, I've read it, it succeeds, then the whole of Yoon Gicheol's shareholding was never validly his. That's not a fine, and it's not a settlement. Every share he's held for 22 years, every dividend, every pledge he's given me, reverts to the estate of a man who died in a stairwell. And the sole heir to that estate is a woman named Park Hari, who has been sitting in your office for a year. Yes, and she'll transfer it to you. She's already signed it, I said. In January, she wouldn't let me read it. Kim Tae-soo looked at me for a long moment. Then I'll support the claim at the meeting, he said. And I'd like you to know that I'm doing it because of a man who stood in the rain looking at boats, and not because of you. And I'd like you to know that I'd have crushed you in June if he hadn't asked me to dinner in 1996. He paid, as he had the first time. At the door, with his coat on, he said the only unkind thing he ever said to me. And it wasn't unkind. 22 minutes at the COEX, he said. I watched it 3 times. I want you to find something else to do with that, Mr. Lee, before it's the only thing you know how to do. The extraordinary general meeting of Haesong Group was held on April 2nd in the 4th floor multipurpose hall, because that is the only room in the building that seats 240, and because Chairman Yoon Gicheol had chosen it himself 11 months earlier for a different reason. I sat in the 4th row. Hari sat in the 1st with a folder in a black dress that had no business being in a room with fluorescent lighting. Dahi presented the claim. It took 19 minutes. Corporate registry extract, seal certificate application dated the day after the death, the guardianship order, the syndication documents, the terminal pledge, and the 41 boxes referenced by index and available in the anteroom for inspection by any shareholder who wished. Kim Tae-soo, holding 640 billion won of senior debt, stood up at minute 20 and said one sentence. Bakdusan supports the claim and will not be extending the facilities. The room went to pieces for about 4 minutes. Chairman Yoon Gicheol did not move during any of it. He sat at the panel table exactly where he had sat when he offered me a car and a 2-year contract. And he watched the room, and then he found me in the 4th row and looked at me. And there was nothing in his face at all. Then Hari stood up. She walked to the front, and she did not go to the microphone at the floor. She went up the 3 steps onto the stage and around the panel table, and she stood next to him. "Uncle," she said. He turned his head. "I have thought about the 11 seconds that followed more than I've thought about any other 11 seconds of my life, and I've never been able to describe his face, so I'll describe his hands." They had been flat on the table for 20 minutes. When she said it, they came together, and he laced his fingers. "The way you do when you're waiting for something you've been waiting for a long time." "Hariya," he said. "You bought me a hotioke," said Hari, on the way to the car. "I've never been able to eat one since, and I want you to know that because it's the only thing you did to me that I couldn't put in a file." She put the folder on the table in front of him. "Sign it. There's no version where you don't. Bake's gone, the debt's called, and the seal certificate is dated the 27th. Sign it, and my father gets his name back on the registry and you go to a courthouse instead of a hospital." Yoon Gicheol looked at the folder. "I was going to give it back," he said. "I know," said Hari. "I believe you. That's the worst part of my whole life." He signed it. She had about 90 seconds. She came down off the stage and along the 4th row and stood in front of me while 240 people were shouting at each other. And she was already going not fading. Nothing so gentle, just less each second, the way a signal goes. "Well," said Hari, "don't. No, I've got one. I've been saving it since April." She grinned. "You never did check the math on the bed thing. Hari, 11 months, 1 basement, 340 million won, and the entire Incheon terminal." She reached out and straightened my tie, which she had never once done. "I'd have taken the offer, you know. The one where you leave the transfer standing. I meant it when I said it. You didn't ask me again, and I've decided that's the kindest thing anybody's ever done for me." "I'll pay it back," I said. "The debt. There has to be a, it's paid, you idiot. That's the whole point." That's what paid looks like. Her hand was on my tie, and I couldn't feel it. "Take care of Soyeon. She's bad at money and she'll be embarrassed to tell you. Go and see your mother on Sundays, even when she doesn't know you. And find whoever Mireille is when she's not negotiating, because there's a woman under that, and nobody's ever looked." "Hari, say something," she said. "You're allowed now." And I did. I said the thing I'd had in my mouth since a card reader beeped 3 times in a restaurant on a hill. And it wasn't for her, and she knew it wasn't, and she laughed anyway. Then there was a folder on a table and 240 people shouting, and a black dress nowhere in the room, and nobody but me had noticed that anyone had gone. Yoon Gicheol was indicted on the 11th of May on 4 counts, of which the one that will actually put him away is not the 2004 transfer, because that's 22 years old and the criminal clock ran out a long time ago. It's the 2009 guardianship petition. You cannot have a court declare a woman incapable in order to keep her quiet about a document. And if you do it, and somebody finds the file 16 years later, the file is still there because family courts keep everything. Kang Ji-ho left Haesong in April with a severance package and got a strategy role at a mid-sized construction group in Daegu within 6 weeks, because that's how it works for people like Ji-ho, and I'd be lying if I said otherwise. Pyo Seol called me in May. She'd built a whole practice on knowing things about a company that no longer had a chairman, and she wanted to know whether there was work. There was. She's very good. Dahi vetoed it 3 times and then hired her herself, which I found out about from an invoice. Cherin sold the apartment in Hanam and took her mother to Ilsan, and the gallery in Samcheongdong closed in August. And about once a month, somebody sends me a link to something about her with no message attached, as though I've asked. I didn't take Haesong's building. That was Soyeon's idea, and it was a good one. The glass wedge on the river had his name cut into the lobby wall in bronze letters 90 centimeters high, and the estimate to remove them was 41 million won, and she said we'd be paying 41 million to think about him every day. We moved the group's head office to Incheon, next to the terminal, into a building that had been Park Munsu's in 2003. Dahi kept the office above the dumpling place. She has 11 people in it now and refuses to move and bills like a woman who never expects it to last. Yoon Charon's card was declined at Sowol on the 19th of June. I wasn't there for it. I want to be clear about that because 4 separate people have told me the story with me in the room, and one of them has me saying something. Here's what actually happened. I was walking up the hill at about 8 because Soyeon likes the cold noodle place 2 doors down and cannot be talked out of it, and through the window of Sowol there was a table of 6, and a waiter, and a card reader, and a young woman with her hand out and her chin up, and a face I'd know from any distance in any weather. 3 beeps. You can hear it from the street. It's a very carrying sound. I kept walking. That's it. That's the whole thing. I didn't stop. I didn't look twice, and I'd love to tell you it was mercy. But I'd already had 11 months to work out what I'd do at that window, and I decided it about 100 times. And every single version of stopping was for me. Soyeon had the door of the noodle place open, holding it with her shoulder, doing the thing with her eyebrow that she learned in February. 2 beeps, she said. Or 3. 3, said Soyeon, and let the door go. There was a card on the dash of the car when we came out. Cream, no logo, fountain pen on the back. Mr. Lee, the boat is finished. Tongyong, the last weekend of July. Bring the lawyer, KTS. Under it, in different ink, in a hand I hadn't seen since January and would know anywhere. I'll be there too. We should talk about the Anson supplier. M.